6:30, and looks like we're ready to go, Kent, from what you see.
Yes, sir.
All right, good. Any alternates or new board members that we have with us?
I'm not sure that there's any alternates today, but I did want to just make note that Rod Sullivan and Royce-Ann Porter will be rotating on the board, and I want to welcome them officially, replacing Lisa Green Douglas and Pat Hayden that are moving on to different committees and groups for the county. So welcome, Rod and Royce-Ann, and welcome to the board.
Nice to have you here. Consider approval of meeting minutes. Any questions on those? If not, a motion to approve, if you would, please.
So moved, Taylor.
Second, Sullivan.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Set the next board meeting date.
Yeah, so tentatively, we are looking at March 31st. We usually have a meeting at the end of March, and that's the date that works best for us. Our draft transportation planning work programs due April 1st, so that's about as late in March as we can hold it. Hopefully that'll work for the majority of the group.
How does this stand with the rest of you?
Very good. That's
Okay.
the way we'll move forward then.
We're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any public discussion of any item not on the agenda from anyone that may be tuning in? Okay, going on. 3A, report from nominating committee for 2021 MPOJC board members.
Yeah, thanks. So Kent Ralston, Executive Director, thanks everyone for taking the time. Back at your November meeting, for those of you that were with us, you'll remember that we appointed a 3-person nominating committee for the chair and vice chair for the calendar year 2021 Urbanized Area Policy Board. The committee was comprised of Louise Fromm with University Heights, Chris Hoffman with North Liberty, as well as Pat Hayden with the Johnson County Board of Supervisors. As director, it's been my practice to review agenda items and major work activities with the chair prior to each meeting, if there's anything we need to cover. And then of course, the vice chair would also preside over the meeting when he or she is not available, the chairperson. Currently, the chair, as we see, is Terry Donahue, Mayor of North Liberty. Chairperson Donahue has served one-year term, and there's a 2-term limit for that position. The current vice chair is currently John Thomas with the Iowa City Council, and John is in the same position. He's also served one-year term, and there's a 2-year term limit for that position as well. And with that, I'd just like to ask either Louise or Chris, Pat's of course not with us tonight, to provide your recommendation, and then we'll just look to the board for confirmation.
Thanks, Kent. This is Louise Fromm. As you reported, Pat Hayden and Chris Hoffman and I met over a conference call, phone call, a couple of times. We unanimously agreed to recommend to the board Mayor Terry Donahue and Iowa City Council member John Thomas be reappointed as chair and vice chair for a 2nd term. And so that's what we recommend to the board.
Very good.
Hey, is there a motion to approve the recommendation?
So moved.
Second, Taylor.
Moved and seconded. Any final discussion?
I'd just like to thank the nominating committee and for their time, and of course, thank John and Terry for your continued work. It's much appreciated.
Very welcome. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, group.
Thank you all.
Consider approval of the fiscal year 22 MPOJC budget. Kent.
Yeah, thank you. In your packet, I attached the FY22 budget and financial forecast. The primary focus of the MPO continues to be fulfilling state and federal requirements necessary for MPO entities to receive state and federal formula and discretionary funds. and also to produce locally generated studies, traffic studies, grant applications, mapping services, and the like for all of our different member entities. As many of you will remember from years past, the MPO is organized as a division of the City of Iowa City Neighborhood and Development Services Department. And our staff also serve as NDS staff of Iowa City with respect to personnel policies, pay plans, and the like. Personnel costs then for the MPO are determined by the collective bargaining agreement between Iowa City and the American Federation of County and Municipal Employees, or AFSCME. And the overall budget for FY22 reflects about a 3.6% increase over FY21, primarily due to increases in costs for staff benefit and wages. And in fact, of the about $27,000 increase over last year's budget, about 80% of that is just annual step increases in wages, and then of course increases in costs for benefits for our employees. The budget also reflects the continued use of about $30,000 in internal carryover funds that we have, and then about $230,000 in planning funds that we receive from the Iowa Department of Transportation. So the budget is largely status quo, no changes in staff or services that we intend to provide. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. Otherwise, we're looking for approval of the budget from you all tonight.
Questions for Kent? If not, would entertain a motion to approve the budget recommendations.
So move, Thomas.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second by Porter.
Thank you, Ms. Porter. Any final discussion or questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item, consider approval fiscal year 22 Johnson County assessments to the East Central Iowa Council of Governments. Kent.
Yeah, thank you. So in addition to collecting our own assessments, we also collect East Central Iowa Council of Governments dues from Johnson County entities and then forward those on to ECOG, basically acting as a pass-through. ECOG assessments are calculated on a per capita basis for counties that ECOG serves. And then we in turn calculate a per capita assessment for each one of the Johnson County entities that pays into ECOG. As for FY22, similar to years past, ECOG has proposed a 2% increase for all the counties that it serves, which is reflected in the attached assessment schedule that was in your packet. ECOG is the designated regional planning association for East Central Iowa, including Benton, Cedar, Iowa, Jones, Johnson, Tama, and Washington counties. And Karen Kurt, director of ECOG, has been kind enough to join us tonight. And I'm sure she can answer any questions about the budget that you might have. But again, just a pretty status quo 2% increase that you've seen in years past.
Karen, any comments you would like to make?
I apologize. My internet connection's a little unstable if I cut out, but no, we're happy to serve Johnson County. We've been doing a lot of exciting work in your area. We've been assisting the city of Iowa City with their business assistance program. We have a couple of housing grants in Coralville, and we've been very involved in watershed work, and we hope to continue doing good things.
Very good. Questions for Karen from any of the group? If not, would entertain a motion in regards to the assessments.
So moved.
Second, Louise.
Thank you. Any other final questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item is consider approval of amendments to the adopted MPOJC bylaws. Kent.
Yeah, thanks. So this is something that many of you will remember we've discussed at several meetings now. Per the adopted MPO bylaws, they are to be reviewed a minimum of every 5 years by a committee of 5 representatives, one of which needs to be from the rural board. Amendments to the bylaws must be approved by a 2/3 majority vote by the urban board and by a simple majority vote by the rural policy board. At this point, both the urban and rural policy boards have considered a set of recommendations from the bylaws committee that we put together almost a year ago now. And an effort to satisfy both the urban and rural boards, I've attached a draft set of bylaws with some further revisions for your review. Per the adopted bylaws, both boards are to be provided the materials 30 days in advance for consideration, and they were mailed to both boards back on December 17th to get those in your hands for review. The revised draft bylaws reflect the rural policy board's desire to maintain rural community representation on the ECOG board, and also to provide the Johnson County supervisors with the ability to appoint the citizen representative to the board as well. The revised draft bylaws also reflect this board's desire to provide Johnson County Board of Supervisors with an annual ECOG appointment by revising the rotation for appointments as we discussed back at your November 18th meeting. And with that, it's my hope that these revised bylaws satisfy both those needs of both the rural and urban policy board. Page 8 of the attached bylaws that are in your packet show the proposed changes as I just outlined. And there's some other just miscellaneous cleanup where we were still called JCCOG in a few places, which was our former name and that sort of thing. But the bulk of the changes are on page 8. And both, as you might assume, both urban and rural policy boards must approve the bylaws for them to be approved and used from this point going forward. So you all have that opportunity now, and then the rural policy board actually meets after this meeting at 6 o'clock tonight, and they'll have the same opportunity to again take a look at the bylaws and consider those as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, but I think maybe we're inching closer to something that both boards will be happy with.
Any questions for Kent on this? If not, would entertain a motion to approve.
I'll move Taylor.
Second by Porter.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Since we need at least a 2/3 vote on this, all those in favor, please raise your thumb up if approved. To approve. Okay, those who do not wish to approve, please signify our thumbs down. We have unanimous consent, meeting the 2/3 majority. It is adopted.
Very good, thank you. And then, as I mentioned, we'll run through the same process with the rural board tonight, and if they move forward with consideration and approval, then we'll be in good shape, and we'll make sure everybody's aware of the changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is consider appointments to the ECOG Board of Directors.
Yeah, back at your November meeting, we discussed the MPO communities responsible for appointments to the ECOG Board of Directors for calendar year 2021. Per our bylaws, the entities that are responsible to appoint elected officials for 21 included Johnson County, North Liberty, and University Heights. However, since our last meeting, North Liberty did indicate that they were unable to fill the appointment this year. So we then provided the opportunity to the city of Solon, and they accepted the offer. I do want to note that the bylaws changes that were just approved, and assuming they're approved again by the rural policy board at 6 o'clock tonight, won't affect this rotation. Johnson County, it was Johnson County's turn anyway this year to have someone on the ECOG board, and that annual appointment now, assuming again the rural policy board approves it, wouldn't change that. So we're good to go either way with these appointments. And then the citizen appointment as well would also, that was already voted on by both boards, so that wouldn't change either. So again, all of these appointments will stand regardless of what happens tonight at 6 o'clock with the rural board. So the appointees from each entity include Johnson County, which is Rod Sullivan, University Heights, which will be Louise Fromm, and Lauren Whitehead from the City Council of the City of Solon. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, just looking for consideration of these appointments to the ECOG board for calendar year 21.
Questions for Kent? If not, entertain a motion to approve the appointments.
So moved, Weiner.
Is there a second?
Second, Goodrich.
Thank you. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any objections? Motion carries. Next item we have is the MPOJC orientation opportunity for board members. Kent.
Yeah, I just wanted to really quickly offer a refresher for those that are on the board currently, or just a quick update for those that might have just joined our board. Just basically giving you a quick orientation. And you don't have to make a decision now, but if you know that you would like a refresher, I usually just meet with a group for about an hour and just cover basically what the designation of the MPO means, the kind of work we do. We take a look at the budget and how we're funded and those types of things. So if anyone knows that they would like either a refresher or a first-time orientation, would just like to signify that, I'd be happy to get your name down. We'll do the same thing for the rural board, and then we'll try and find a time that works for the group.
I
Lori?
would.
I'm seeing Lori, okay.
Lori.
you.
Roy Sam Porter.
Okay, Roy Sand, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to be put on that list? Very good, thank you.
Okay, now we come to transportation planning. Consider approval of Federal Transit Administration Section 5307 Transit Operating Formula Funding Apportionment for fiscal year 2021. Grizzly Adams, Brad, that's your,
That's me. That's my COVID beard.
oh, okay.
Yeah, Brad Newman, Associate Transportation Planner. This is our annual 5307 apportionment. DOT has indicated that we have over $2.9 million to apportion this year to Iowa City Transit, Coralville Transit, and University of Iowa CAN bus. The formula we base the apportionment on uses 4 factors, including operating costs, locally determined income, revenue miles, and fare revenue. The data we used, or we normally use, comes from the prior year's statistics. But because of the COVID-19 effect on transit, and after we talked to the transit managers, we decided to use the FY19 multiplier in statistics. Actually, it would be the FY20 multiplier, but it's the 2019 statistics. Attached to the memo, you'll find the proposed apportionment for 5307. And we also attach the 2020 apportionment, which uses the same multiplier that we're proposing this year. Once the apportionment is approved, the staff will inform the FTA of the apportionment amounts and begin drafting the grant applications for the 3 transit agencies. And as always, we try and get those prepared and ready to draw before the end of June, which is we use the local fiscal year. So Technical Advisory Committee unanimously recommended approval of the 21 apportionment amount. So are there any questions on that?
Questions from the group?
You can see everybody went up a little bit in the apportionment since we had a little bit more money this time around.
If not, would ask the motion to approve the recommendations as presented.
Move to approve, Sullivan.
Second, Thomas.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion or questions? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, consider approval of Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act funding allocation for local transit agencies. Brad, back to you.
Yeah, this past couple of months, we did receive word that the FTA has provided over $14 billion in additional funding. This is in addition to the CARES Act that we received last year. And of course, this is the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Apportionments Act, or CRISA is what they're calling it. This funding, like I said, supplements the CARES Act of 2020. CRISA funds include over $1.5 million for the MPO's urbanized area and for us to apportion. Like the CARES Act, the funding is 100% federal share and is intended to help cover payroll and operational needs for transit. After discussions with the 3 transit managers, it was proposed that we use the same multiplier that we used in the CARES Act funding last year. Attached in your memo are the the approved 2020 CARES Act apportionment and the proposed 2021 CRISA apportionment using the same multiplier. Again, once the apportionment is approved, we'll let FTA know what that apportionment amount is, and we'll begin preparing the grants. And like all the other grants, we want to get them in and get them drawn down or have them eligible to draw by the end of the fiscal year. The Technical Advisory Committee recommended approval of the CRISA apportionment, with the University of Iowa abstaining from that vote. And so staff is asking for approval of the apportionment. Any questions?
Any questions for Brad? If not, entertain a motion to accept the recommendations.
So moved, Taylor.
Second, Louise Fromm.
Thank you. Any final discussion or questions?
I'd like to take a moment to clarify the university's stance on this relief funding that I think we are very thrilled to get, as I know Coralville and Iowa City are as well. The university essentially views these funds as relief to agencies that have felt repercussions in both expenditures and revenues the last year. And it's our basic premise and belief that the distribution of these funds is not in alignment with those impacts that we're feeling. We acknowledge that we agreed to the distribution of the funds based on the formulas that we use every year, which we're not fan favorites of, but we agree. We understand that we have a different funding mechanism in the 2 cities. But specific to this relief funds, again, relief being the key phrase, our impacts are just as significant as Iowa City's and Coralville's. So in discussion, both for the TAC meeting and this one, I went back and forth on whether I was going to make a stand, not vote, what have you. I have a lot of numbers here to further the point that we're trying to make and the why. I know you guys are probably all very familiar with how Canvas is funded, and I can go down that path if you'd like. But the reason why Brian, our Canvas manager, did abstain from voting at his committee was because of the inequities we see in the distribution of the funds. So I just have to say I agree. And I can take any questions about the specifics, but at the end of the day, we're receiving a lot less, of the funds that we think we should get.
Questions for Aaron? Okay, we'll go ahead and we've already have it moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposition?
Nay.
We have 1 recorded opposition with Ms. Shane. Motion carries. Consider resolution approving federal functions class designations for urbanized and area roadways. Emily.
Thank you. Emily Bothell, Senior Associate Transportation Planner. So we've been working with the Iowa Department of Transportation to update the federal functional classification system map for the Iowa City urbanized area. The functional classification system map is a hierarchy of 5 roadway classes, and it designates which roads are federal aid routes. Updates are typically done every other year in conjunction with our STBG and TAP funding cycle that Kent will discuss in a later agenda item. And this is because the funding can only be spent on roadways that are functionally classified as collector or higher. Last fall, we solicited local communities for any roadways needing reclassification or roadways that they would like added to the system map. We received 21.56 miles of amendments from Coralville and North Liberty, as noted in your memo. Following the November Transportation Technical Advisory Committee meeting, we sent the requested amendments to the Iowa Department of Transportation for pre-approval. They pre-approved 7.12 miles of those roadways, while 14.44 were denied. And the reasons for the denial or approval are listed in your memo. If approved by the policy board tonight, the total road mileage would be just under the 35% threshold that's required. It would be at 33%. And at their January 19th meeting, the Technical Advisory Committee unanimously recommended amending the system map to include those 7.12 miles of roadway. So if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer those. Otherwise, we are looking for approval of the amendments and to authorize the board chair to sign the attached resolution.
Any questions for Emily? If not, asking any member of the group to establish this resolution, please.
So move, Thomas. Second, Sullivan.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Final discussion or questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposing votes? Resolution passes. Item D, update on MPOJC fiscal year 22 transportation planning work program and fiscal year 22-25 transportation improvement program. Brad, back to you.
Yes, thank you. The Transportation Work Program is a document that identifies major projects to be addressed in the following fiscal year, which in this case is FY22. The work program includes all state and federally required planning processes and documentation, ongoing and routine projects and special projects requested by member entities. We will begin soliciting for FY22 projects in February. The draft work program must be submitted to the Iowa DOT, Federal Highway Administration, and Federal Transit Administration by April 1st. So the board will, again, this will come back at your May meeting for approval. The Transportation Improvement Program is a programming document for federally funded transportation improvements within the Iowa City urbanized area. The document includes federally funded transportation projects for all modes of transportation. It formalizes specific projects to receive federal funds and the year in which the projects receive funding. This TIP will cover the fiscal years of FY22 through FY25. This spring, the MPO will once again be awarding funding for Surface Transportation Block Grant and Transportation Alternatives Program funding. STBG is over $7.5 million. Well, it is $7.5 million. And there's $525,000 for TAP funding projects. The STBG funding is higher this round since it includes $1.8 million that was returned by the city of North Liberty from their Highway 965 Phase 2 project, I believe. I think that was completed back in 2014. The projects awarded in this spring will be programmed out in FY25 and 26. The MPO will distribute the STBG and TAP applications February 1st, and we'll have those due back on February 22nd. And then ultimately it will come back to the board in July for final approval. Any questions on those two, the work program and the TIP?
Questions for Brad? Very good, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is update on STP and the Transportation Alternative Program grant funding process. Kent.
Yeah, thanks. I'll go through this quick since there's quite a bit of overlap with what Brad just commented on. But typically the MPO conducts our competitive grant process for both our Surface Transportation Block Grant and Transportation Alternative Program grants in the spring every other year. And the biennial process has historically reflected the desire both of our Technical Advisory Committee and this policy board to allow 2 years of funding allocated at once, basically giving the opportunity for communities to get larger funding awards for larger projects. As Brad mentioned in the last item, calendar year 21 marks a grant cycle year for the MPO, and staff anticipates again that about 7.5 million, as Brad mentioned, in STBG, and then just a little over $500,000 in TAP funds will be available for programming. So this is an exciting time for us just to have the funds available and be able to get those programmed in our transportation improvement program later this summer, as Brad mentioned. So if there's any specific questions of the grant funding cycle or anything related to these items, I'd be happy to answer those for you.
Questions for Kent?
Otherwise, everybody that's on our Technical Advisory Committee will be receiving those grant applications next week on February 1st. We'll give your engineering staff about 3 weeks to turn those around, and then we'll be bringing these back to you for approval in March.
Very good.
Thank you.
Going on, other business. Report on the MPOJC Trails to Tables Charity Challenge. Sarah.
Hi, Sarah Walls with the MPO. Most of you probably know that it's almost been a decade now since we've been doing the Severson Charity Challenge to remember Linda Severson, who used to be the Human Services Coordinator for the MPO. This is a challenge that is between the staffs of the different community doing fundraising basically during the holiday season. And typically most of the communities did their fundraising for the food banks. This year, because of COVID, that posed some challenges. And so we had proposed an alternative, which is the Trails to Table Challenge, which we started on December 1st and will wrap up at the end of the month. And the goal was to raise money for our local food banks in North Liberty, Coralville, and Iowa City, and the Community Foundation of Johnson County helped us set up a fund that we could accept donations through, and they will divide those donations between the three food banks. We raised around $2,500. We'll have a final total at the end of the month. A secondary goal of ours was to encourage people during this difficult time to stay out on the trails, to be outdoors. We knew, and we presented you at a previous meeting, how we were seeing greatly increased trail usage, and we wanted to keep that up through the winter. And so we, our staff, the MPO, said that we would run, walk, and bike the 100 miles of paved trails and side paths within the metro area. And we've done that, and we documented our rides and walks with photo and video. We produced 13 different route maps. We also held 6 Zoom sessions on different aspects of the trails. We had presentations on the Sycamore Greenway Trail, the Clear Creek Trail in Coralville and Tiffin, and then a presentation on trails out in Johnson County connecting up with the Clear Creek Trail, but then also connecting out into Lynn County. And then a couple of special presentations on winter biking and winter running with local groups. And again, lots of photos and videos. And hopefully a lot of people enjoyed that, and it inspired people to get out. I know that we learned a great deal just from our own getting out on the trails. Speaking for myself, it was great to get out to some of the other communities. I really enjoyed the parks in North Liberty that I was not familiar with. and learned to appreciate a park in Iowa City that I hadn't been to before, which was Kiwanis Park, which was delightful. And the many underpasses and special connections that are available in Coralville. I think we're all eager in the spring to make that ride up into Lynn County, and also looking forward in the next few years to being connected to Tiffin. So those were things that I think sort of inspired us as we went along. For those of you who weren't on Facebook or Instagram to follow us, you can still do that. But also you can get a look at those maps that we provided. If you go to the MPOJC.org website and go all the way down to the bottom in the lower left, you'll see a link to Trails to Table, and you can see all the maps that we did. And we also have links. The recordings for our Zoom sessions are now up on YouTube. And so those are things that I think were fun to do, and we heard from people that they really enjoyed them. And I think that they will benefit us as we move forward with the long range plan, and also just the planning and the work that we do with bike trails in the future. So I want to thank everybody who helped us and for allowing us to do this year. It was really fun, and we appreciate your support.
Yeah, I want to reiterate that this is kind of a special one for us with the passing of Linda there a few years back, but I know a lot of you here made some generous donations, and it's very much appreciated. We're hoping to get to $3,000 here by the end of the month. We might not quite make that, but even what we have now at 2,500 or so is not insignificant for the 3 food pantries. So just a personal thank you to all of you as well.
Thanks for the report, Sarah.
Thank you.
Anything else to come before the group? Motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved, Taylor.
Apparently you want to stay around for a while.
Second, Sullivan.
Okay, there you go. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you for a quick evening.